Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Transplant Coffee Talk. I am your host, Steve Belcher. I want to apologize for the last transmission. We had some technical difficulties behind the scene. Don't know what it is. I'm sorry, what it was. We did everything the way we normally do it. However, it just wasn't showing the broadcast, so we apologize. I'm here this morning with Alexander Berrios from Louisville, Kentucky. How you doing, Alex?
I'm good. How are you, man? Doing well, Steve.
Great, great. How's the weather there in Louisville?
Weather here is good. It's a nice fall day, probably 70, 60 degrees right now, sunny. You can't complain. It's a good day.
Great, great, great. So, as I had mentioned in the last um, broadcast that we was doing before we got pretty much sidelined, I had met you in Silver Spring, Maryland on
Mm-hmm.
Friday. Could you let our audience
So,
know how that happened? What was you here in
yeah.
town for?
Okay. So I was in town for a 2-day conference, and I was on a panel to talk with doctors, nephrologists, surgeons, um, doctors groups, different universities to discuss about organ transplantation and ways to keep the organ transplant healthy for the life of the organ for the patient. We talked about different kinds of um, tools and tips to keep it healthy, to kind of look at the data over years, and we looked at different kinds of studies to kind of look to make sure that we can keep these transplants and look at different resources. We talked a little bit about adherence and discussing about ways for people to keep taking the medicines and kind of making up different kinds of suggestions and ways to keep patients from keeping taking the medicine so they can have their transplant. And it was a
Great.
really great experience talking to people. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, did you feel like you had a place at the table per se?
Yes, sir. I would definitely say it was nice to be a voice at the table, to be able to talk with all these different surgeons from all over the country, to talk with doctors, to talk with the surgeons and the different transplant center folks who are wanting to hear from the patients. It was very patient focused. There was 4 of us, and we were able to discuss our story and what we think is important and how to keep, important to keep how to keep our organ as long as we can.
Right. So, let me just ask you this question before we go into your story.
Sure.
What would you say to the person who may be watching on Facebook right now that lives in a food desert community or urban community that had a
Mm-hmm.
transplant that lives below well, at federal poverty level that don't have access to the information such as yourself or other patients who had a transplant who are privy to have access to conferences such as the FDA. What
Mm-hmm.
inspiration could you give to these guys if they want to learn how to take care of their transplant and be right there? What could you say to them?
The number one thing I would say to anybody who has an organ transplant right now would be your own advocate. You have to start at the bottom. You have to start with your grassroots. You need to talk with your transplant coordinator, your social worker, and have a conversation with them and get involved with different support groups that might be out there and available to you in your community. I might do some plugs, but there are a couple of organizations I'm a part of in regards to specifically kidney, with the American Association of Kidney Patients and the National Kidney Foundation. Those are great resources that you can use. And that they can kind of get you connected with resources. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free. So you just have to take the time to educate yourself, be your own best advocate, talk with individuals like your transplant team, even in the kidney world. If you're even on dialysis, talk to them and just kind of continue to be your own advocate. That's what I would say.
Wow, thanks for that, man. Appreciate that tip because I'm sure as people who may be watching who had a transplant and they're just living, day to day, just thanking God that they got a second chance at life, but
Yes, sir.
don't know the education part of keeping that organ safe and keeping their health up and just being mindful of what's going on so they can keep that organ as long as possible.
Yep,
So
exactly.
thanks for that, man. So
Sure.
Alex, how does your story start with kidney disease?
Okay, so back in 2006, I just moved to Kentucky, and I had was sick with some symptoms that I thought were the flu or food poisoning, and so I went. I decided I needed to talk with a doctor, but I didn't have insurance quite yet. But I went to a little clinic, which is kind of like those doc in a box places that you find at Walgreens or Kroger, different supermarkets, and I went in and kind of went in for feeling really kind of having had migraines and nosebleeds. I decided I needed to go talk to somebody about it and was willing to pay what I needed to pay at the time. So I went and saw they were actually doing free blood pressure screenings. So I went to the little clinic and saw that they were doing the blood pressure. And I found out that my blood pressure was super high. It was 213 over like 109. So needless to say, they were worried and concerned. So they laid me down in their little area with low light because they were afraid I was going to have a stroke. And I went and took medicine. Still didn't bring it down. So that they then decided I should go to the emergency room. So I went here in Louisville and was there for, I think, 2 or 3 days. And they ran several tests. They did an ultrasound. And they found out I was only born with one kidney. And so that one kidney was doing doing a lot of work for 26 years at that time, or 27 years at that time. So they went ahead and kind of were like, they gave me medicine and they kind of sent me on my way, kind of brought me to get me they got me a primary care doctor at the emergency room and a nephrologist. So this was in February of 2006. In April of 2006, I started dialysis. So it was pretty quick. It was around Easter, I think, if I remember correctly. And I started in-center dialysis and was in a relationship at that time. And she and I were working on trying to kind of look at my diet, and we kind of took everything away that was high in phosphorus and sodium, potassium. And she was a really good resource in helping me with that. And I appreciate that for her and having her help me. And in time, we were unsure on how to kind of ask people about whether or not they'd be willing to test. So I did dialysis for almost 2 years. I think it was like a year and 9 months. I think it's as long as I did it. So I was very blessed to have been able to be that. To only have had to do it that long. So what happened leading up to that, and only having that short period of time to do the in-center dialysis, a lady I went to church with me and my partner at the time, she had offered to test for us early on, and we didn't know what to say. And we weren't sure how to say yes. So we did the dialysis, and then shortly after, I think a year and a half later, I was having a lot of surgeries. My fistula wasn't taking. I was having catheter issues. So we decided we'd ask her again, and she did. And my donor is somebody who I know, and she donated. I think we started the process in April, I think, of 2007. I want to say April of 2007. I think in June of 2007, I got my kidney transplant. So it was a relatively quick process. And I've had it now 11 years. And it's been I'm on immunosuppressant medication. I've had only really one little hiccup, I would say, and that was actually last year. I had an acute rejection episode where they had to give me prednisone to help kind of bring down the inflammation on the kidney. They did find out that after doing a biopsy that it was an acute rejection, and that I had a new diagnosis of IgA nephropathy. So I have to kind of watch my protein intake. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, and my journey with kidney disease, and been transplanted now 11 years.
Okay. Wow. let me ask you this. When you first found out you had high blood pressure, did you have any symptoms?
So no, well, yes, the symptoms were the migraine headaches and the nosebleeds, but I don't think I knew it was high blood pressure at the time. It was all kind of like hindsight. So I'm like, oh, that's what high blood pressure is. It's having the constant migraine headaches. So that's what it was. I didn't know I had high blood pressure before 2006. I was relatively healthy. I guess I'll give you a little backstory. I wasn't born as a preemie. I was born 1 pound and like 3 ounces, so I was really a young baby when I was born. So I didn't. I had some complications early on in life, but in regards to the kidney stuff, blood pressure, none of that was an issue up until I had turned 26.
Okay, okay. Um, so when you found out you was born with one kidney, were you surprised?
Say that again.
When you found out that you were only born with one kidney, were you shocked by
Hmm.
that?
I was shocked. I was beyond belief. Yeah, I remember being in the ultrasound room, and the technician being like, "Okay, we're looking for the kidneys, and seeing that she only saw one." She's like, "This doesn't seem right." And she's like, "Did you know you were only born with one kidney?" And it was just like I had no idea, and it kind of answered a lot of questions. And I kind of went. I remember coming back after the ultrasound and coming back to the hospital bed and telling the person who was there with me. I don't remember who it was. I said, yeah, and I was only born with one kidney, and we were just all floored. Like I kind of made light of it, but I just couldn't believe it.
Wow, wow. So, do you think if you were born with two that maybe you may not have been in that predicament so soon, or even if
That's a good question. That's a possibility. Yeah.
okay. Hey, when the doctors came back and started talking about dialysis,
Hmm.
what went through your mind at that time? Did you know what dialysis
I
was?
no, not even a little bit. So my mother is a nurse, and she knew what it was. So when I had heard that was a conversation, she was concerned. She was like, "I don't want you to go on dialysis," and I didn't know really kind of what that was. Excuse me, what that was going to look like. Um, and so I remember what I do remember as well is my partner at the time telling me that she had heard the nurses say right after I had I think it was either after my biopsy or my ultrasound, saying that um, she heard the nurse say kind of secretly, "Oh, he's going to need a dialysis right away or a transplant right away." And I was like, okay, so what does that all mean? So it was really a pretty I had recently just moved to the state of Kentucky, so everything was new to me, like new relationship, new place, new disease. So it was a lot of things that I was dealing with. So it was a scary thing. I didn't know what to expect. I toured the dialysis center, and it was pretty interesting. I didn't know what to expect, but
Wow, wow. Um, so how did you feel when you knew that the transplant was a go?
how did I? Oh man, I was on vacation in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and I got the phone call from my donor telling me, "Hey, I've done all my testing, and it looks like we're ready to schedule this." And so it was actually a pretty unique experience, um, and just kind of feeling like, "Oh my gosh, my life is going to change." It's going to be really. I'm not going to be tethered to this machine. I'm not going to have to deal with, um, just kind of all the ups and downs of what I was feeling with just the tiredness. I remember always feeling really, really tired because it was just kind of the up and down of having to get your blood cleaned and then tired and then just being exhausted. So
Sure.
to your point, your question, yeah, the transplant information when knowing that it was gonna happen, it was pretty awesome.
Right. So, if you're watching, good morning to Sunday Morning Transplant Coffee Talk. I'm here with Alexandria Berrios from Louisville, Kentucky. If you're watching this broadcast, please share to raise kidney donation awareness or any organ donation awareness to give someone a second chance at life, such as Alex. Alex, we had a question here, and I mean, of course, I know the answer, but I mean, I'm just going to shoot it up there. And
Go for it.
Bubba Gray, he asked, since you got a kidney transplant, can you pee now?
Yes, I can. Yeah. Yeah. I did it. I can completely have no problems having, with urination, no problems at all. Now, I know during dialysis, there were some struggles with it, of course. You lose kind of like your bladder and having to deal with the kidney and all the work it does. Sometimes you struggle with peeing. But yeah, no, since the transplant, I've been able to pee with no. Thanks for the question.
Great, great, thanks. And Sandy out of New York. Hey, Sandy, thanks for watching. Can't wait to
Andy,
have you on. Please, people, Sandy is also looking for a kidney donation. So her picture is up on our page. Please share. And Sandy says she's happy to hear, what's going on with you. So,
thank you,
Alex,
Sandy.
I just wanted to share with the audience that you also are a patient care technician. Is that correct?
Say that again.
You're also a patient care technician.
So I have that knowledge of being a patient care technician. I was shortly about 6 months ago started the process to work with a dialysis company and worked as a technician. Went through the training to be a technician and kind of learned the other side of being no longer the patient, being on the side of putting somebody on in-center hemodialysis. Learned how to kind of work that, learn to work that angle. And I found, I'll be honest, to be very transparent with you, I found it wasn't for me. I found there was just a lot of issues I think I had with some of the scheduling, and that I have a young family, so it was really early mornings. I think some of it was just learning to be efficient with the job. I was able to do the work, but I don't think I was able to kind of do it at the speed they wanted it to be done. And I just kind of learned that, and I'm okay with that. Like it's something I learned about myself. That's what it's all about. I don't think it was anything on necessarily. It was me or them. It was just kind of learning a skill, and sometimes you find that like it may not be for you, and that's okay. But I have the knowledge. I mean, I know like kind of what to look for, and kind of like if people, if they're where their creatinine levels are, and kind of what with their fistula, and kind of looking at the feeling for it and making sure that it's still healthy and that there's no stenosis and that kind of thing. So I have that knowledge, which is good, which will help me to be an advocate for everyone who's either on dialysis and getting ready for transplant of that nature. So that's what matters.
Right. So let me ask. I mean, I'm just kind of jumping onto a kind of like a different subject in transplant, but it all pertains to kidney disease dialysis. And by
Okay, go ahead.
you happen to be on both sides of the fence as a dialysis patient and having the uh, opportunity to work as a patient care therapist for one of the, well, not where almost the largest dialysis corporate company in the world. I just want to ask you some questions that raise concern from a post that a patient had posted out of Oakland, California, that I saw in one of the rooms. It was actually a picture, and
Okay.
and she talks about what the safe dialysis looks like. So she says that in some of these clinics, well, let me just say it like this. She mentions that as patients, you go in and you have the same routine day in and day out, that you pretty much accept what's going on, not knowing if you're getting a safe dialysis or not. And that's how she summed it up. And basically, as a caregiver myself, I can take it a step further.
Okay.
So you could be in a clinic and someone could be on dialysis, and something happens where the patient blood clots, and you would just see the person just not even try. Okay, leading up to the clot of that, maybe some problems were going on, like the machine kept going off, and no one got up in a fast amount of time to reset it. And let's say the patient didn't get heparin or something like that. And let's say after multiple times of the alarm going off and just hitting the button and resetting the alarm and not figuring out what is the cause of the alarm, that the patient blood may have clotted. And so they'll just take it down and throw it away and set up a new system like it wasn't nothing, and not maybe do a hemoglobin, draw some blood to see if the patient's blood count drop, or even let the charge nurse know that happened. So I can see a valid point there. But what I wanted to ask you, going to this clinic, and I'm not trying to throw any shade on the clinic, but just being on the patient side, have you seen, I'm going to read about 8 complaints that are valid, that I think are valid. And I just want to know, have you seen this or have you experienced this as a patient inside the dialysis clinic? Okay, so have you yourself experienced another patient treatment being shortened due to lateness, which may not be any fault of their own?
Yeah, I would say I've seen it both ways. I mean, as a patient, I see patients all the time have their treatment cut short. Some of it was the patient's reason because they were needing to go somewhere, or they just didn't want to finish the dialysis. And there were some that were just shortened because I think there were just issues with the flow of the way the treatment, the way the care was going that day. So sometimes a technician and a nurse would have a conversation, and they would shorten it by 20 minutes or 15 minutes or even 30 minutes. And I think that is something that, looking back at it, I think that there should be a conversation with everybody. I mean, there should be kind of an IDT, a meeting as to why, why are those trends happening? Why are these treatments being shortened? And is it issue? Okay, I'm seeing that comment there from Mr. Mann there. If infiltration is common, even though you have infiltration, there's ways you can fix that. And so, but to your point, to your question, I think that ultimately, having the conversation as a patient, I think if you're being short, if your treatment is being cut short, you have that right to you have a right both ways. Let's put it that way. And as a patient, if you choose to shorten your treatment, I think to go back to what I'm going to say before about the transplant, you're not going to get your likelihood to get a transplant is going to go down, because if you're voluntarily shortening your treatment, because I've seen that a lot too. Sometimes the patients will do that, and I don't think I've shortened the treatment for myself as a patient total of maybe 5 times when I was on dialysis because of some reason, because of transportation. I mean, there's a wide variety of things. But to your point again, I think to simply say, have I seen treatments being shortened? And it goes both ways. Yes, I see it both from patients and from the techs and nurses. So.
Okay. Wow. Let me go to this question right quick with Bubba Gray.
Yeah.
He wants to know, he just got informed last week that he will be on the kidney waiting list. Oh, you can see the question yourself.
I can. Yeah. So I think, answering that question, let's see. The wait list, it depends on where you live, man. I mean, it depends on how many places you're on the list. You can be on multiple lists, from what I remember. So I think that if depending on where you are, I mean, if you're on the wait list, I was on the wait list too, but I got lucky and had somebody test and donated to me. But I know the wait lists can be long. I've heard anywhere from 2 to 5 years. is that range of what I've heard. I'm not sure, Steve, if you've heard that or not, but that's what I've heard.
Yeah, but for some people it's been longer. I think
Sure.
I'm sorry, Tamika Smallwood. I was trying to get you on my mind. Tamika Smallwood out of Norfolk, Virginia, is been waiting for, I believe, 9 or 11 years. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
Tamika, if you're watching, please correct me if I'm wrong. So, and then I seen people who just got on dialysis, not even been on 6 months, get a transplant.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
there's a lot.
It's almost like the luck of the draw. I mean, for a lot of people, especially in the urban city. So let's move on with this list right quick, because I just want people to see that this doesn't happen in all units, but patients do experience um, that they're not being safely monitored. We did a poll and we had over 70% of people said they didn't feel safe getting their treatment. Now, when you have that, that's a problem. So, okay, number 2, have you experienced or seen fruit flies or gnats receiving your treatment, flying around?
And my treatments, when I was working as a tech, I would say I've not. I didn't see it on the treatment floor. I did see it in our break room, but I didn't see it on the treatment floor. So not to say that I think that it may have been on the treatment floor. I did not see anything, but I definitely saw it in some of the in our break room, like where we have our lunch. But not to say that's probably say that it maybe I don't want to make an assumption here, but that it may have gone to the treatment floor, but I've not seen one.
Okay, so we're gonna jump back and forth because some people are starting to engage, and I want you to let you answer their questions. So Sandy says the waiting list in New York City at Weill Cornell is 8 years. Her blood type is A positive. So Sandy Nina Salas, A positive, looking for a kidney in New York City. She's on Facebook. So please, if you know someone who want to do a pair donation or who would like to donate that's A positive, please reach out to Sandy Nina Salas.
Here we go.
And my man out in Cali, Cimarron, he says the wait list is 10 to 12 years.
That's outrageous. Yeah, there has to be. Yeah, our system is broken. I'm just gonna put it out there. We need to fit. I'm not sure where to even begin and start on that. But you're right. I mean, these wait times are long. I mean, there's nothing. Why are there such organ shortage? I mean, some of it is just a lot of issues. I think. Yeah, you're welcome, Bubba. You're welcome.
Yeah, and Bubba, please don't let other states that may have a long waiting list discourage you from from that hope, because it's there. It can happen at any time. And I encourage you just to do all you can to stay healthy, eat clean. If you need any help with maintaining your weight or anything that's dealing with the transplant list, you can even talk to Joe Bueno in South Carolina. He's a transplant coach. You could talk to Lamonte Reed with Stride out in California. You could talk to Wilson Dew, Reno Warrior. He's out in California. So there's a lot of guys on here that on our level that are willing to help. I mean, you don't see these big corporations out here trying to do this, but you got honest, sincere folks like Alex here, who's been through the process, who wants to give back, and who is willing to put in the work to make sure that education is put out there. So please keep watching us. Say that again, Alex.
I was gonna echo what you're saying. What you're saying is so right. If we can be our own best advocates. I mean, just ask questions like you've been asking. Continue to just talk, and if you have questions or if you have knowledge, talk to anybody who's willing to listen about it, because kidney disease is really it's like the third word, it's the third silent killer in our world. I mean, of diseases. So, you just have to be very, very diligent and learn to just kind of ask the questions, talk to nurses. I mean, it needs to be brought up. It needs to be continued. I mean, because I think some of the conversation I've been having with other folks, with my organizations I've been a part of, I think is like early detection, because it's always so late. Like I was fortunately really lucky. I was 27. I was young. So I've had it 11 years. I know there's going to be a chance that my kidney probably will fail again. But I'll deal with that and cross that bridge when I come to it. But I think that, educating and just advocating for yourself and just not being afraid to ask any questions. There's nothing like a stupid question. You can ask any questions about kidney disease, what the transplant will look like, medication, exercise, diet. Look at alternative medicine. I mean, there's all kinds of avenues that you can look at to keep your kidney healthy. There's different stages, and that's maybe another conversation, but there's different stages of kidney disease. So if you're early in the stages, if you can look at what that's going to, you can keep your kidney that you have go working by eating properly, looking at your phosphorus and your potassium, looking at your electrolytes, keeping yourself very mindful of what you're putting in your body. I mean, I've seen posts that Steve has put about like the fast food that it's out there. I mean, kidney disease can lead to heart disease. I mean, it's all connected, right? So the kidney, if your kidneys are failing and if you're on dialysis for a long time, that long-term effect of dialysis can hurt you. And I've seen and heard that people have had heart attacks because that dialysis isn't right. Your body is supposed to, if your kidneys are working, you are able, your kidney is always able to filter all those toxins pretty, relatively, on a pretty quick basis if they're working. If they're not working, dialysis only does I think it's maybe, I don't remember the percentage, but when you do dialysis, the kidneys don't really well. I mean, they do, but the maintaining is it's not like it is when you have a working kidney.
Right.
So, yeah.
Our partner Jermaine down in Evansville, Indiana.
Not too far.
And Jermaine, we definitely got to get together, bro. But he says the waiting list for him was 5 years, but it got short down to 3 because of his blood type. He says, here you go, right there.
Yeah, I see. Mm-hmm.
So if I'm not sure, Jermaine, if you got somebody who's already donated, but we have Jermaine Fingers, our affiliate down in Evansville, Indiana, that's waiting for a kidney as well. So we have some more comments on here.
Let's do it.
Okay, one from your dad.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right, Dad. So to sign up on multiple wait lists, what you can do is talk to the one transplant center that you're looking at, and they can give you a list with, I think it's UNOS, and I can't remember the pronunciation, what that stands for, but it's like an organ procurement listserv. And what you're able to do is you can tell them that you're interested in wanting to be put onto a wait list to donate an organ of any sort, and then they can put you in touch with those particular transplant centers. So if you like an example, I know you're in Atlanta, so in Atlanta or Nashville or your region, your area, you're able to kind of talk with those individuals, and they can get you on those wait lists, and I can help you with that afterwards.
Right. Yeah, I was trying to figure out that organization UNOS, and I know it has to be United Organization of Transplant or something like that.
I can't remember it even.
Yeah. Sorry, guys, but we'll get that information up there for you. There are some people who are registered with multiple hospitals. Is that correct?
That's from what I understand, that you can be in multiple lists. Yes.
Okay. Your dad had another question.
Mm-hmm. So what is the status of unit calendar being used for transplants? So I think it's always going to be a work in progress. The technology is out there for transplants. We're looking at all kinds of things from the artificial kidney. We're looking at ways and different kinds of resources and kind of making sure that I think some of these transplant centers are key. I think that having them have conversations together to discuss about ways to kind of make sure that the transplant is happening the right way, that all the tests are getting done the right way from clinic to clinic or from center to center. I hope I answered that a little better, but I think those are some of the technologies that I've been hearing about. And there's always more research to be found to do.
Wow. So Jermaine says his blood type is B. He's on, I guess that would be Indiana University.
Yeah.
That would be on
yes, sir.
Louisville list. So
yep,
two for
yep,
him.
Yep.
Is that, are they close together, Indiana and Louisville?
Evansville, yeah. Well, So Louisville, like, it's like we're across the river, so like we're not too far from Evansville, or I'm not too far from Evansville. And IU, is in Indianapolis, so it's a 2.5 hour drive. I want to say. I think I can never remember that drive. I've not done it a lot, but to go from Louisville to Indianapolis isn't terribly far. So that's good, Jermaine, that you're on both lists. That's really good.
So I found out what UNOS was, and that's United Network for Organ Sharing.
There we go. Thank you. That's good to know.
Yes. So if anyone needs to know that information pertaining to transplant, donation, UNOS, United Network for Organ Sharing. All right. So Alex, getting back to the dialysis units and some of the complaints that patients shared, have you ever witnessed bed bugs at a unit, or ever heard of a unit having bed bugs?
So yes, I have, unfortunately. So what happens is a lot of our patients come in from nursing homes. So we have an older population, and so a lot of times they're not being necessarily getting monitored or taken care of very well there. And so what happens is bed bugs are coming from the patient, from the chair, or from their bed, and they're coming from the ambulance, from the chair, onto the chair. So I mean, when that happens, we have to they've had to take the patient away, and they'll do another treatment, or they'll double up on their treatments because they don't want to spread the bed bugs around the treatment floor.
So as a healthcare professional myself, I have witnessed this numerous times, and I can share with you that that's true about the nursing home, but also people coming from the regular homes as well. Or the bus that brings them, like a city bus. We have MTA here in Baltimore. You have multiple people riding on there. So someone could bring it on, they can get into the fabric of the seat, and they can spread that way. Also, they don't stop the treatment because a patient has bed bugs. What they may do is put a trash bag or some plastic over the chair, and when you're dealing with that patient, you may have a jumpsuit on and still deliver care. And I've seen some staff treat patients very differently when they find out or know that this person has bed bugs. So it just needs to be education there as well. I'm just going to go over a couple of things. I'm not going to spend this whole time on patients' complaints, but they are valid. And one thing I think is really important is, have you noticed patients not being monitored properly? Or have you ever experienced that where you could be asleep or taking a nap and you wake up while you was doing your treatment and no staff member was around, or machines was going off and nobody was in the vicinity?
in my experience, I've not seen it. I mean, I imagine that it's been there. In my experience
Oh, of
as
course.
a technician, I mean, I'm just saying, just in my experience, I've not seen it. I'm not denying that it doesn't happen, but I'm just not, Oh, Bubba. Okay, I'm going to talk with him in a second. I just saw his question. But to your point, Steve, I've not seen it. I mean, we made one of the biggest things I remember as a technician was we always had to be on the floor. Like if one person was gone, like if a technician needs to go back into like the reach room or something like that, we'd have to go back. Somebody'd have to be on the floor. Even when I was training, if one of the techs, the more seasoned techs, had to go back there, I would I'd say on the floor. We're all alert and we monitor them pretty well at the clinic I work at. But I don't deny that it doesn't probably happen.
Mm-hmm.
Let me answer Bubba's question.
Sure, go for it.
So Bubba, so you're on the UK's wait list. That's great. You can get on the University of Louisville, and if you can find me, Bubba, like later on after here, like when we're done here, friend me on Facebook. I live in Louisville, and I can look to talk with you about what that could look like about getting you on the list and go from there. If that sounds okay. All right.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Thanks for that tip for him, man. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So,
Sure.
as we was talking about the monitoring of patients, Jermaine, he's a dialysis patient down in Indiana, and
Right.
he's experiencing this. He said in a lot of cases, yes. And then he goes on to say that where there's one person on the floor.
Yeah.
Now, let me just ask you this. Being that you've been trained as a technician from a well-known corporate company that has a well-sound training program, in your professional opinion, do you think that's appropriate to have one person on the floor with, say, 10 patients or more than 3?
Yeah, no. Yeah, those numbers, that quota needs to. You can't just be one person on the floor for any amount of people. I mean, maybe obviously you're not going to ever see a clinic that I've seen where you're going to only have the 3. Usually, at least when I worked, it was always in pods of 3 or 4. So but generally most times the clinic was always either a 12 station unit or a 24 station unit. But it's not appropriate at all. I mean, you definitely need to have a nurse and a tech with you.
Right.
Even if it's at 5, even if everyone's sleeping, and like you still, I think there'd be too much pressure on that technician or even that nurse. Like that's a lot to handle. If you have 10 people, even if you're in a small clinic, if it's one nurse and one tech and you have 12 people, like even that's going to be too much.
Right. Okay. So I think this is a good question, and I want you to. It's not a question. It's a comment, and by you having a voice at the table, I want you to, the best you can, answer why this may happen. So
Okay.
Sandy says John Hopkins in Baltimore, our city, the waiting list is 3 years, but the evaluation process is very strict, and one can be disqualified for very little things. What's going on with
Okay.
that?
Speak to that a little bit. What little Sandy? What little things are you talking? Can you give me an example?
Sandy, if you're still watching, give us an example of what can disqualify you. And they are pretty strict. Wait a minute. I'm just trying to recount a conversation I had with someone recently that told me, oh my God, this would have been fitting for this. He told me there was certain things that you could that disqualified him from being on the list. And it was something really simple. Um,
It's
oh,
escaping you right now.
yeah. I want to say it has something to do with the living conditions, or having a job or I can't. But I was so surprised at this, and I'm going to think of it. Please, somebody. It was Don P. It was Dawn. She can answer that question really good. Don P. Morgan. I hope you're watching. If not, that's okay. But not all transplant centers are alike.
Oh, of course, right?
Yeah. And if that's the case, why is that when people who are on, who do qualify have to go through this strenuous process? Okay, take for instance, I know who it was. Pastor Nick. Pastor Nick
Okay.
Gentile. If you're watching this, please tell me what you told me about the transplant process. But let me just share you his story, right? It's not a big story, but this gentleman, Nick Gentile, he's a minister. Guy's only 32, no, 26 years old. I'm not sure, but 26 to 32. But ever since he was young, he wanted to donate. And he's a Caucasian brother.
Sure.
And and I just wanted to share that. And he wanted to donate. So he went to Weill Cornell in Philadelphia because he wanted to donate to an African American lady. And Weill Cornell took him through a lot of stress. I mean, they just dragged their feet on everything. Okay. And he did everything they asked him, and they dragging their feet. And then so he changed from there and went down to Georgetown, got a better response. Now they want to do a psych evaluation from something that was 10 years ago that he answered a question. And it had nothing to do with no crazy mess or anything like that. But now they want to go back and it's just like one thing after another, holding up the process for this lady who clearly he wants to donate. Even his blood type doesn't match as hers, but he's willing to do the shared program so it can get her at the top of the list. But they're taking her through some bull crap. Why is that?
Yeah. So
and some people, I'm sorry to interrupt, and some people go through the process with flying colors and they get transplanted.
You know something, you brought up a valid point. And when I was voice at the table, that was something that they're struggling with, that they talked to me about this past couple of days when with the workshop I was at, is about transplant centers and making it kind of streamlined so that everybody kind of they struggle with. I mean, everybody. I mean, we're human, right? So, like, I mean, every clinic is or every transplant center, or their protocol. I think that's a conversation that is hopefully will be changing in the near future, so that it doesn't have to be so, like, why one clinic can be so hard and disqualify you for X, Y, Z, but with, like, in my case, I mean, my donor was able to do it in 6 weeks from start to finish. So, like, that's, I've heard stories of people it took them like 6 months from when they wanted to test to when the transplant happened. I did it in 6 weeks. I got myself very blessed. So, I think that looking at what that could look like and figuring out how to just basically streamline it and kind of find some criteria that you need to make up so that everyone can kind of be on the same page. And that might be a very big task, don't get me wrong, because there's so many centers, but in so many different places, universities and stuff. But you got to start somewhere, and I can't speak to that why that's the case. But all we can do is, figure out how to best streamline it and make it so that it's an easy process, especially if you want to donate. I mean, because there's so many organs, there's so many people on the wait list. It's outrageous. Yeah, Jermaine, I see what you're saying. I mean, yeah, and that's a frustrating thing that I hear you say that. I mean, it's, there's so many people on the wait list. I think that, again, I'll always say this. I'll say this till I'm blue in the face. As you continue, Jermaine, to kind of continue to advocate for yourself, talk to those centers, and tell them what you're wanting to do. And if you're not getting the right answer, go to another center. At the same time, I mean, I think you can get the answer you need. I mean, like Steve was saying, there was somebody who um, went from being at Whale to Georgetown, and Georgetown helped a little easier. So I mean, you can get your answers. You just need to have that advocate. And my role, what I want to do for everybody, is to be that advocate and kind of be in touch and have conversations with you all, to kind of make sure that you know that process and what it looks like. Because I know that sometimes you guys get thrown a lot of information. So if I can help you in any way, kind of give it to you in smaller chunks and in smaller pieces where, okay, here's the three things I need you to do. Here's the next steps. Here's the next step. So that eventually it will work for you. So that's what I would like to do for you all. And for anybody who's willing to listen, and be that advocate and be the educator and kind of give you the resources that you need to get that transplant, go from there. And, and if you're blessed enough to get the transplant before you even go on dialysis, then we can do that too.
Mm-hmm. Alex,
so reach out.
Yes. Do you think minorities have a fair shot at transplant? Do you think there's disparity between minorities getting a transplant or being access to those resources to be able to consider that?
See, I think that there is some discourage. It's difficult. I think that there can be. I think some folks who are lower income who are dealing with, who may not have what we call health literacy, an understanding about kidney disease and what that looks like. That's where I step in. That's where I'm hoping to kind of be that person. Yes, I think that there is a disparity in that. I think that people who are low income, who are either African American, or it doesn't really even matter race. I think honestly, socioeconomic. You can be a white person below the poverty line, you can be a black person who lives a really high lifestyle. It really, I think we're a person first, right? We all bleed red. I think that, yes, there is in the urban community a lot of African American folks who are in kidney disease and deal with that. But I think if we can look to educate them, and if I can be there, be that voice for them and help them understand what it means to get a transplant and what that does, I'm going to continue doing that till I leave this earth. So.
Absolutely. There's some people who say that patients who dialyze in urban communities or clinics, the reason why they're not giving information on transplant is because the companies want to keep them there on dialysis as quote a cash cow, as they can continue to come to treatment and get dialysis, and that's how they're making their money. Do you think there's any validity in that?
I think that, unfortunately, I think that there is. I think that's a sad fact. And I'll always say, if you're sensing that as a patient, just continue to be that squeaky wheel. If you sense that you're being shortchanged, be that squeaky wheel. If you feel they're telling you, if your nephrologist is telling you, okay, I don't want to, if your nephrologist is like, yeah, I don't think you should get a transplant, or I don't think you can get a transplant at this time, I think you fire your nephrologist. Maybe I'm saying a loud thing, but maybe you need to look at another doctor who's willing, because you have that right as a patient on dialysis to pick a doctor who's going to be your advocate, who's going to be your cheerleader, the president of your fan club, to make sure that you get the right care at the right time. I think that it's important to make sure that I'll always say this: advocate for yourself. Fire your doctor if you feel that he's not giving you the right, or she's not giving you the right care. It goes that advocate for yourself, talk to your doctor. Also advocate for yourself in a way where you're being healthy too. That you're not smoking, that you're not obese, that you're not drinking, that you're not, eating the fast foods. That's important too. Like, you can advocate for yourself in other ways by making sure you keep yourself as healthy as possible. So you don't get the disqualification by being obese or being, or having issues with maybe other organs. Or, some folks have genetic issues and have other comorbidities, diabetes and high blood pressure, and some of that's out of your hands to a certain point. But I think, but I think you also need to look at realizing that we're our own advocate. We're our best and worst enemies for ourselves. And I think it's important to make sure you do what you can do, and then bring that information and bring that to your doctor and be that advocate. Talk with your doctor. And if you don't like what they have to say, fire them and make sure that you have kind of, crossed your T's, dotted your I's, and find the doctor that's going to best suit you.
So
I'm going to turn on the light. Hold on a second.
This is live TV. This is live, so
no, anything. It's getting dark. I want to make these long. Right, there we go.
Okay, so saying that, before you became a technician and when you started dialysis, were you advocating for yourself, or was you just part of the cogwheel of going to treatment and coming home? Was you advocating like you're speaking now? Were you that way?
I don't think I was. Not as well. No, I always wanted to get myself better. So I think I kind of was like, I did well with my eating well and kind of taking things out of soda, things that were like, I worked on my nutrition when I was on dialysis more. Like, I cut everything out. I wasn't much of an advocate at that time. I was, but I was also worried about getting myself better. So I think I found that over time, after the transplant and stuff, I realized I need to be an advocate now. So not as much, but I'm doing it better now.
Right. You got a question from Kelly.
Sure. Could part of the issue with long wait lists also be not enough people are organ donors? It says organ donors on their driver's license. Kelly, that's a good point. I think it really kind of starts from, when you're on when you go to get your driver's license done, and it says you want to be an organ donor, I think you could start right there. I think maybe having that conversation, even with people at the driver's license place, and saying, hey, here's some information, a little pamphlet, just a simple little, like, okay, this is what organ donation looks like, and then give them the information there. I think we as a community need to, like, just kind of present information to them about organ donation, and then they can do with what they want with it. That's the best thing. I'll advocate it till I'm blue in the face, but you can lead a horse. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't always make them drink. But I'll continue to do that.
We had a comment from Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
She says, unfortunately, too many seniors of color at the centers have no idea their rights to be advocates. And that brings up a good point.
Mm-hmm.
If you can remember, when you were going to the DaVita back in 2006.
Yep.
Did you have a patient advocate there? Someone who welcomed you to the unit, or someone who told you what to expect, or how things went, or who advocated for the patients or talked in behalf of the patients?
I've been preaching that to the choir, Steve, for the longest time. No, I didn't. We had our social worker, but they were always, had high caseload. So they were very, came in maybe once a month, every little bit. So no, that's what I wish we had now. Somebody who has been, like in my case, I would love it for a doctor's group or somebody to say, hey, we need patient advocates or navigators for in the clinic while they're there talking to the patients. And so patient advocates are not, for whatever reason, I don't know if, I think what I've kind of seen is that some doctors groups, like, for example, with DaVita, I know that they had they have what they call a Kidney Smart class. I'm sure it's nationwide, right? So they try to advocate for those folks, and that's where I think they push some of their patients to take this but I think that when you're in the center, I think one of the biggest things that's missing is that person who's been through it. So, for example, if I could talk to 80 patients over the course of a month, all over the state of Kentucky, for example, and say, hey, listen, I know what you're going through. I've been through it. Let's talk about what your options are. Let's look at the kidney advocacy let's look at like the Smart Start, Kidney Smart classes. Let's look at what we can do to get you to continue to educate yourself. And and just have somebody to talk to. I mean, you're more likely. One of the questions I've been looking at is, and I'm looking to do a study at some point, do some research about, would patient A be more likely to stay and not miss a treatment? That's been the biggest thing I've seen. Is that people miss treatment because they're just tired of it. They don't have anybody to talk to about it. They're alone, So is there been something out there that's been done where they've seen, if they've been able to get any data where if somebody like myself or a patient advocate worked with a group of patients, if they were missing treatment for, maybe of a 3-day treatment cycle, they missed 2 days. If you did it over a course of a month and had this advocate, would they make those other 2 treatments to make it 3 full? Like, would that work? Would that happen? Would they still stay on treatment if they had somebody to talk to about it versus feeling alone and not doing it? And so I'm looking at trying to figure out how to kind of see if that's something that's out there, and kind of maybe matching them with a peer, or looking at kind of figuring out like what are the main reasons people miss treatment, and if they had somebody to talk to while they were there, would they more likely do the treatment?
Okay, Alex, you mentioned about the Kidney Smart class.
Yeah.
That DaVita gives.
Mm-hmm.
I seen that here in Baltimore, and let me just tell you the main problem with. Well, it's not a problem. It's a good thing that they had the class, but one, they don't market it to the point where people know about it here.
Yeah.
2, you have people who doesn't have transportation or depends on public transportation, bus, whatever the case may be, and that the population that this geared to, it's a lot of disparities, lack of financial resources, lack of access to health care, lack access to education. I mean, fresh fruits and vegetables. So who's going to try to get some money to go downtown to a, Kidney Smart class that, I mean, the whole point is, what I'm saying is, they need to get out in the community. They don't just need to be stationary at the DaVita clinic and waiting for people to come there other than getting dialysis. They need to have community advocates right in the community, whether it's urban areas, whether it's out in the suburbs, wherever. They need to be boots on the ground giving information out, instead of thinking people are going to come and you're not putting the information out there on the mainstream basis for people to even see. Let me say this: I see more advertisement for dialysis facilities being open than I see for diabetes and hypertension being the leading cause of kidney failure. I never seen any billboard other than the one I just posted the other day with the white gentleman with a scar down his chest, and they promoting for to watch your hypertension. But statistics show that hypertension, cardiac diseases are more prevalent in African Americans than their white counterparts. So I didn't understand the billboard, which was in a predominantly country area with white population and very few African Americans. But that's in the country. This needs to be in the city where this problem exists, fourfolds, where there's convenience stores, Dollar Generals, and General Dollar, and fast food places, and mom and pop's convenience stores that have all these high sodium items.
Right.
I just don't understand. I mean, I understand, but you would think,
Yeah.
that this is the problem. We see it. Let's do something about it.
Yeah, no, yeah, you were preaching to the choir, Steve. I think there has to be a way to, get like, I mean, getting a group of people. I think it all goes about like power in numbers. Hey, Angela, it's all about power in numbers, and it's all about like having the Kidney Foundation or any organizations that have the money, right? If it's organizations that can throw money at um, at some of this programming and this marketing to kind of get it out there. If it's making those billboards, if it's making, like Angela said, those TV announcements. I mean, we have kidney disease is in the mainstream a little bit, like Alonzo Mourning, right? Basketball player, he was a kidney failure. Yep, exactly, Angela. Yeah. So there's all kinds of things out there. I mean, what we're doing today, what you do, what Angela does, what I'm hoping to start doing here soon, get that out there and continue to educate, grassroots, get out on the streets, walk those streets, talk to people, put it on car windows, put it on on community boards. I mean, the more we blast it, again, power in numbers. If we can all do it at once, yeah, there are other chronic conditions. I get there's cancer, and then there's all, and kidney disease is important. I mean, it holds, you're right, Angela. Yes, I see what you're just saying. I know, and we don't, and so the money is an unfortunate thing. Like it's a great, it's the root of all evil, right? You hear that a lot,
Right, right.
So people want, to kind of keep us down. I mean, it's discouraging, but I think I have we have passion. We're all talking because we're all passionate about this.
Right,
but
right.
I think we need to kind of bring our, what I've heard you say, Steve, the army of kidney folks, and bring it to everybody. Yeah, I know what you're doing. Urban folks need it because it's prevalently, that disparity is there. But I think like looking at people who are, the Asian population or a Hispanic population or even the white folks, I think everybody needs to be made aware of the fact that it's a non-discriminatory disease, and yes, it's showing discrimination. Angela, yeah, I'm down for it. Let's do it. So I think that having like what am I trying to say? I lost my train of thought now.
Okay.
I think that we just need to just be, because I'm passionate, right? We need to just kind of get everybody together and just kind of and make sure we're all on the same page and talk and share our stories and explain and advocate. And it's all like I told you on Friday when we spoke, like creating little like top 10 lists of ways to avoid dialysis, or little things that are like, people are like things in small chunks, right? So like they don't want to read something for 50 minutes, or they want to see something quick. If it's going to catch their attention, you bring it on and you go about your day. And I think that's what I want to work on, is getting little small pieces of information to them, and just kind of get it out there, put it on all forms of any kind of social media, U.S. mail, smokestacks, whatever you got to do to get it out there. I mean, and eventually it'll start to stick. And organizations like Angela's here with the Urban Kidney Alliance, I mean, just associate yourself with people who are similar, and we can keep on going.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me ask you this before I move on to what Joe Bueno, his comment.
Yeah. Let's do it.
But what I wanted to ask you, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I mean, you are affiliated with a big organization, the American Association of Kidney Patients, and you've been on both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
With all the congressional stuff, people going to Capitol Hill, meeting with their senators, trying to make change.
Yeah.
Is anything, honestly, in your opinion, is being done?
It's no. I mean, so I went to Capitol Hill for the first time in March with my organization I was a part of, and from what I understood, it was my first time, and they had been doing this for years before that. And so I know that some of these conversations were kind of like a duo, or kind of repeatedly kind of keep on saying the same thing. So from what I'm seeing, and from what I've heard talking to other kidney advocates, that they're just trying to continue to kind of be that squeaky wheel. Because if after a while, if you don't continue to talk and advocate, you'll just be left by the wayside. So to your point, though, I think that it's going to take a village, and it's not happening as fast as we need it to be. So no, it's not answering. It's not happening quickly.
Right. Wow. Just put a short message up to my friend.
Okay.
So.
Cool.
Yeah.
So like I said, I think that like there's a lot of stuff out there. And one thing I remember learning in my workshop that I went to this past week in Silver Spring was like, for example, for drug costs. It's a conversation that we haven't really talked into. But like when you're immunosuppressed with transplant medication and dialysis medication for kidney stuff, it gets expensive. You're on a fixed income. One of the things that one of the doctors told me about, and one of the drug companies told me about, was that, like, for example, people who have cancer and people who were back in the 80s with HIV and AIDS, they were able to create a group of advocates who were able to change the healthcare system. So they were, from what I understood, were able to change and look at ways to make drug costs more affordable. I'm going to say that in air quotes, but you know what I mean? Like, not as expensive as it is, from what I've understood. And so I think that in regards to transplant, I'll speak to that, is that there's not really apparently an advocacy group that's like really a well-oiled machine that can come out in droves to talk to people at the FDA or people at different companies and discuss the reason why drugs are so expensive. I mean, I asked that question, like, and they just brushed me off, but I expect that.
I know why it's expensive. To line their pockets.
Exactly. Yeah, I know that, but I mean, like, could they make it cheaper? Could they, there's all kinds of things. So,
right.
But to your point, like, I think that if we could really show, I think, like what we do here, what I've seen with the AAKP and NKF, I mean, I think if we can all make sure we're all kind of on the same page, all talking about the same thing, and then come together as a big group, and maybe it's a lot to take on, and maybe I'm thinking way above my head, but I think that may take people seriously with kidney disease, because I think, again, we are blessed that we have Medicare, and that there was that senator or representative back in the 70s, I think, who dialyzed on the floor, and we do have coverage of 36 months, and it's covered. It's there are some diseases that aren't covered under insurance, so we have to look at it that way too. That we're not somebody who's in liver failure or somebody who's in lung disease, or like, we have something that the government is paying for. I mean, it may not be a lot, and but
80%.
It's better than nothing.
80%.
Exactly. Yeah, 80%. Right. Exactly. So 80% of it.
And you're right, because some countries like in India and Cameroon, it's astronomical. Have a gentleman, Faisal Pari, who reached out to me. He's from India, and he's a young guy, man, and he got kidney disease. He's on dialysis. I put his picture up on our page, and
I remember that.
He can't afford to work, and they discriminate against him because apparently in India, if you're sick, you can't work, or they look at you differently if you're sick.
Wow.
Yeah. But Joe Brano makes a good point, and this is what I want to ask you, being on both sides of the fence. Did you experience this with your dietitian?
Let me read this. Hold on. Some dietitian and these dialysis offer calorie counts for McDonald's or all their fast food restaurants instead of showing the region. Hey, Joe. Yeah. Wow. That is a really. It goes back to kind of what I was saying. I'm not sure if you were on about, like, sort of firing your dietitian like that. I mean, yeah, that's a tough one, because I think that the dietitian is almost kind of like telling you to continue to be sick by giving you these calorie counters and what you can eat, meals with McDonald's and whatever. I mean, that's discouraging, and I wish it, and I can see why it bothers you. Bothers me too. I don't have an answer to that. I wish that we, we can go back to the fruits and vegetables, but there goes back to that point about sometimes they want to keep us sicker.
Right. What would you say with this comment from Angela Davis? She said, as far as the education, a three-pronged approach:
Let me
legislative
see this.
policy, community awareness, and education.
Oh, Angela, you are like spot on that. And like, I would love to be able to hit the piece on community awareness and education myself. I think that like, just like I said, grassrooting it, putting it out there. I mean, yeah, the legislative policy is important too. That's where I did the walking with, on the Hill last March. And I'll continue to still do that. I'll do whatever I can to get a voice at the table, like I did this past couple of days with the FDA. So I think that being able to have that opportunity um, is a blessing because I kind of know what can be in the works, and then if I have the opportunity to be in continued conversation with them as one person, it's best to do that and being involved with some of these other, like there are a couple places out in California that like want to hear my story and want to talk with me about what can we do to keep organ transplantation going. I know dialysis is a separate animal and it's privatized and all that stuff, but I think that it's important to make sure that we get a little bit of everything. To answer your point,
Right.
Angela, about the three. I think you're right. I think it's legislative, community awareness, and education. And yeah, those corporations, those ones that do have the big bucks. I mean, that's really. I mean, sometimes we have to play the game. Maybe and maybe we're in, and maybe I'm. That's why I'm here, right? Yeah, but no, totally. You spot on, man. It is a business, and it's a business that if we as advocates, or me as an advocate, and we are our own advocates, but as advocates, if we can continue to just kind of be that squeaky wheel, talk to the corporations, have little conversations, because you just never know who you're going to meet and who can make that little change. Don't settle for less. Don't settle for the status quo. Continue to be that squeaky wheel. Talk, write. I mean, the biggest thing I've been learning about too is to write my state representatives about certain legislative policies that are trying to go through, and just look for report and insight as to why, and maybe ask them why they're not wanting to sign on particular bills. And they may skirt the answer, but it's better to still be that squeaky wheel.
Right.
And just don't settle for less. We're our own person.
All right, I want to put up a couple more. I mean, we way over our time, but this is a definitely good conversation.
I got all that.
Yeah, my friend Gene Shamando, who came to Washington D.C. from Ohio, he walked something like 400 something crazy miles, 497, and that's the gentleman I told you I invited to my house, to my parents' house, and we broke bread together. But he says he's saying opt out is working in the UK. And I'm trying to think of what he's maybe talking about, maybe transplant, that a group of concerned, motivated citizens here can change things. Rob Portman spoke with me at length, but needs more than just me persuading. But I'm not sure about the opt out is working in the
I'm not either. Yeah, well, let me speak to a little bit. So in my conference I was in past week, I spoke with a couple of nephrologists out of France and one out of the Netherlands. And the gentleman I spoke with out of France was explaining to me how it's free. Like they encourage you to be an organ donor, and they encourage, like, there's no cost associated with donating an organ. There's no discrimination about, if you donate an organ that you have to go on any kind of like FMLA or all that kind of stuff that they have here in States. And he just said that it's very different, at least in France, it was very different in how they look at the kidney transplant organ donation way. Like it's backwards here. They say like it doesn't cost them anything at all to do it.
How is their waiting list?
So it's amazing. Yeah.
Is their waiting list long?
I don't remember. I'd have to ask him. I'm not sure. I don't think it is, but I don't remember.
Wow. Okay. So, my man Joe. Say that again.
No, I was just saying, I think it's just an interesting fact that in France or in other parts of the world, it's the way they look at healthcare is just different than here. I mean, we just have it backwards.
Right, right. I agree. And I just want to put this out there. Joe Bueno out of South Carolina started a foundation to get
Okay.
people on the transplant list. He's doing amazing things down in South Carolina, Myrtle Beach,
Okay.
helping people get on the transplant list as far as modifying their diet, working with them through
Yep.
exercise, mentally, physically, and spiritually, and getting people. I mean, he's
Yeah.
got many people on the transplant list that couldn't make it on the list on their own. So my hat, and
Mm-hmm.
he's a transplant patient as well, and he has a good story. He started off, fighting the system, going to dialysis and really being non-compliant with his treatment. And he turned that 360 degrees around and got a transplant and doing amazing things. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so as we, come down to our show,
Sure.
what advice, being on both sides now, what advice could you give someone who is watching right now, or they have a family member who just got diagnosed last week with and got to go on dialysis? What words of encouragement, what advice, what could you share with them, being that you went just for a routine checkup and found out the information you found out, to being on dialysis, to being getting a transplant, to speaking now? What could you share with that person?
Okay, Steve, thank you. So, and what I've said before, since I've been saying this in the last little bit, is to continue to advocate for yourself, educate yourself, um, just keep on looking, talk with people who are in similar situations than you. Look at reaching out to the doctors, directly. Reach out to people. There's support groups out there, remotely, like electronically on social media. There's some that are there probably, through your local hospital. Ask those questions. Ask them, is there not a support group? Create one. Or, we have peer mentoring programs through a couple of the organizations I've been a part of with the National Kidney Foundation. Reach to them. If you, from the very beginning, when you get early diagnosed, and depending on what stage you're in, of course, like, we want to keep you away from dialysis if we can. So if you're early diagnosed and you happen to be in stage 2 or even stage 1, educate yourself, get out, talk to your nephrologist and say, okay, what can I do to keep me here so that I don't have to worry about dialysis, and then I can still keep that kidney at a particular, percentage. I think that, reach out to me, like, I know I'm here in Louisville, Kentucky. Find me on Facebook. I will gladly share any information and insight I can give to you, on who to talk to, on what to look for. Look at your nutrition, look at your food, and kind of and be your own advocate. Kind of take things that might be, you're going to hear a lot about, like phosphorus and potassium, and look at some of the food sodium. Look at the foods you have. Make small incremental changes is what it comes down to. Don't make large sweeping steps, because you're gonna find that you'll probably, more likely than not, fail, and you're gonna struggle with that. Small steps, little by little, and those small steps. It takes 21 days to create a habit, right? So take
Right,
those 21 days to work on being adamant about kind of making a change in what you maybe drink. If you're a pop drinker, or if you like salty fries, like, learn to kind of, like, maybe look at your portion sizes. Look at how it may take you a minute to cut it out completely. We're not asking you to cut out nutrition completely. We're looking at just kind of figuring out how to, take small portion sizes of things that are maybe high in sodium or high in phosphorus, and try a little bit at a time, and then eventually start cutting it out little by little and replacing it with something. Look at your triggers. Look at when you get stressed, or you get at a moment when you're feeling tired, what you go to. Do you go to that ice cream, or do you go to that French fry, or that burger, or that burrito? Like, learn to just kind of say, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to eat it maybe for a little bit, or I'll take a bite so you get that satisfaction, and then you move on and do something else. So that's the nutrition side. And the other side, I think, like I said, look for community resources, look for support groups that are in your city. Call a National Kidney Foundation, talk to Steve, talk to me, talk to anybody who's willing to listen. We'll help you out.
Right. Appreciate that. Wow. I just wanted to send a shout out. I just noticed my old boss is watching, Zarita Pearson, CEO. Well, not CEO, but she's one of the owners with Advanced Dialysis Center out of Orlando, Maryland. Very, very good company, respectable dialysis company that serves patients that are located in nursing homes. I worked for them for 3 months. For 17 months, and it was a pleasure It was a pleasure working with this company, Advanced Dialysis Center out of Orlando, Maryland. So thanks for watching, Zarita. I appreciate you looking. Alexandra, so we're out of time. Anybody you want to give a shout out to?
So I'm going to thank you, first and foremost. Thank you, Steve, for giving me this opportunity to talk with you. I look forward to working with you some more in any way possible here from Louisville. And any way I can do, reach out to me. You know how to get a hold of me. But for everyone else, who's out there, thank you so much for taking this last little hour and change to listen to me and hear my story. And I say thank you. I say hi to my dad and my stepmother, who I think are still on this chat. I want to say hi to my daughter Abigail, my son Xander, my partner Tamira, and her family, and everybody who's willing to listen and just and be here for me. I appreciate all the support over the years. I really appreciate support from my family from all over the country. I have family in Connecticut. I have family in London, England. I have family in Atlanta. I have family everywhere. So I just wanted to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to kind of be a voice for folks with kidney disease. And I will continue to be your best advocate. So if you have any questions or concerns, if you want to kind of, have a reach out to me on Facebook, email me, whatever you need. I'll be here. I'll continue to be here as long as I'm on this earth. So I hope you all have a great day, and I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for being on the show, Alex. It was, like I want to say, it was a pleasure meeting you. I never thought, when we first met on Facebook, maybe what was it? Probably about 6 months ago, something like
about
that. Yeah, and to be here talking with you, but to also meet you in Silver Spring. In person. That was a good experience.
I agree.
And I wanted to also share with Bubba Gray, the next show, or all our shows as far as Sunday morning transplant coffee talk, is every Sunday, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. However, today we kind of went over the show time because we had some issues in the beginning and restarted the broadcast. So every Sunday, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. If you would like to be on the show, just send us a message. We'd love to hear your story. Again, Alex, thanks a lot for being on the show. We appreciate everyone watching. We'll be back next week with another guest. Please tune in. And Alex, again, say hello to your family. To your father for supporting us, your stepmom, everyone who watched from your family. Thanks a lot, man. I'll be talking with you soon.
We appreciate it.
All right, Alex, take care. God bless.
God bless. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right.